board. And so I took the presentation that I showed at the Round Lake area luncheon, and I did modify it somewhat. I added a little bit more detail than obviously somebody that has to listen to what's going on with 5 villages wants to hear. And I want to focus on the budget. I think this is a good thing to review since we've all been working on budgets and have turned in our figures, and we're going to probably have to take another whack at it and make some cuts here and there or change around priorities. So I think it's good to revisit some of this information. So bear with me while I step up around to the computer. Am I loaded?
Oh.
It's a loaded question, isn't it?
You're just going to turn on the top.
Let's get it. So there may not be erased.
You left this on, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Are you connected to the projector?
Yes, it is. Shining screen.
It sounds like it's thinking about it now. I think it's. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, your computer was live.
It live.
I saw this movie, you won't like the ending.
The butler did.
Yeah. Do we have a mouse handy? Otherwise, this isn't going to work. If we can't get it to work in a minute, I'll give a very short synopsis and then show it at the next board meeting, because I'm not going to make this through.
Kelly just went. I don't know.
Do you need the light on to see?
I don't think so.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe not. So, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to go all the way down to the bottom. Oh, here we go. Boy, I feel silly.
Is this an IQ test?
That was one of the questions on Jeopardy. That's the damn review.
It won't let her go everywhere up here. All right, let's go down here. She's very much. I does not want to go. Maybe it's just too clean at the bottom. All right, Kelly, come here and you try.
Jeff's gonna.
Oops.
No.
The start menu?
In the far corner, all programs, or Microsoft Office. Yeah, no. Beautiful. Okay, now you have to just look at it, listen. Open. Yeah, you want to click on open to see to go to UGC. There you go, I'm going to click on that sucker and we're going to
How's it for Hunter?
now go to slideshow.
Go to from beginning on the left.
Okay. Well, I think everybody knows we're the Village of Hainesville, and we are incorporated in 1847. We are the oldest village in Lake County. And I always like to show these figures. You can't show them enough, particularly from our neighboring villages, because it is staggering when you think about the type of growth we've had. Yes, everybody else in central Lake County has had significant growth. But the main difference here between us and many of our other neighboring towns is they had public works facilities. Many of them, had full-time police departments. Our 1990 population of 134 people, included every kid in town and up to get to that number. And of course, we're all anxious still to see what the 2010 census figures come in, but we do expect it to be 4,000 plus. And can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The administration, working with the board here, has said the first thing we had to do is start planning for the future, that the growth is finally steadied enough where we should be able to do short and long-term planning for police services, public works, and village character. It is kind of sad that for being the oldest village in Lake County, there's really nothing here that identifies that. There's really no landmark or significant architecture which really lends to that message. And just a reminder again, when we're working on our budget and talking about what our upcoming goals are, especially since we're in an economical crunch, what our citizens told us is priority of village services, #1, police, #2, public works, #3, village character, #4, bike path, and #5, community events. The other thing that still surprised many people at the Round Lake Chamber luncheon, again, there's a big change in Hainesville demographically. It's not bad, it's not good, it just makes us different from what our history has been in the past. And a lot of people were surprised to really realize this. I'm going to come over here to point out a couple things. The blue line shows the Village of Hainesville boundaries. That's the village limits. Now, when you go back to that 1990 census figure, when we were 134 people, the only real residential housing that existed was over on the far west end of town, with a scattering of homes and farms along 120, 134 area. And the vast majority of these homes fell within the Round Lake School and Park District. And it was that way for many years, which is why we're tied to the Round Lake area. And we're certainly proud to be working with the Round Lake area, and we still support the schools and park districts and the fire district and all those taxing districts within our limits. However, demographically, what changed a lot of things in our village is when it was finally decided to let new housing in, especially the first new housing that started the boom of our growth. This black line shows the housing, which is a little over 2/3 of the housing that now exists in the Grays Lake School and Park District. So it really changed the dynamics of our community. So we wound up in some ways becoming a village divided because we have this east-west thing going on. We are demographically a town that has a large population of families and families with school-age children. Most families with school-age children gravitate to events that rotate around their schools and park districts. So there was an emphasis, if you will, during this boom, put on Grays Lake. West end out of town felt ignored, and I can't say that I blame them in some regards. Later on, we had new development come to the west end, which actually is also in the Round Lake School and Park District, and that would be the Cranberry Lake subdivision and townhomes. So now the Round Lake side grew again. And as you all know, we've heard from residents in the past, there was some even confusion because people bought homes there and thought they were moving into the Grays Lake School District and came to find out that's not where they were. So this has created many challenges. On a community level, we don't want to be divided. We're a small town. You expect a small town, everybody to know everybody. Well, east doesn't always know west and vice versa. So I've always felt one of our challenges is to try to host community events and do activities that demographically attracts everyone as much as possible. So the other challenge that came up from a police service challenge that when I explained this at the Round Lake Chamber meeting, a lot of people said, well, that makes a lot of sense. I understand what you're talking about now. Again, going back to those demographics, majority of our police calls, we have a high number of non-emergency calls, dogs barking, you know, noise. I'm not going to say that it's not a reason you shouldn't call 911, but it's not a dire emergency. We get those calls all over town, but particularly when this area is booming, we have a very high number of service calls in this particular area. And the other thing that's unique, and unfortunately there's nothing we can do about this, but poor planning or lack of planning on Grays Lake and Hainesville side is we have all these homes. Look at that line of homes and their backyards back up and abut to Grays Lake backyards. If you go to the Round Lake side, you don't see much of that at all. We have backyards that back up from Round Lake Park to Cranberry Lake, but it's not backyard to backyard. There's also some walking and connections, so you can get from one area of the village to the village next door, Round Lake Park. Over here, there is no connection. There is no connection where you can walk safely and legally and get from Hainesville into Grays Lake. Now, of course, that doesn't prevent us from doing that. The kids all know which yards they can stop through and which they can't. There's even worn paths in the ground. We have a park that also abuts the Grays Lake boundary, and that's another famous cut through. And it makes for a lot of mischief, if you will. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. And why it's not dire crime, it's always created a lot of calls, a lot of concerns, and it's been a challenge. And we have noticed a lot of residents have made comments that they feel we have a better